old money, status symbols, movie stars dripping in luxury brands on the red carpet. These cultural images have become practically synonymous with fashion powerhouse Hugo Boss. But did you know the man behind the name Hugo Boss was once bankrupt and disgraced? Or that his company only survived thanks to a pact with Hitler's Nazi regime during World War II? From a small-town German tailor shop to an empire outfitting the Third Reich's military to a global fashion titan worth billions. This is the unbelievable true story behind one of the most famous names in clothing. It's a winding tale spanning over 100 years filled with gritty war profiteering, family betrayals, political scandals, celebrity seductions, and against all odds, rises from the ashes. The dark origins of this brand reveal shades of greed, ambition, oppression, genocide, and later redemption. This is no ordinary fashion brand built on creativity alone. From day one, survival depended on Hugo Boss himself making morally questionable moves time and time again. Devastating choices imprinted into the very fabric of his namesake company forevermore. The whole stunning story sounds too outlandish to be real, but it is. And it's time to peel back the curtain on some shocking truths behind the legendary Hugo Boss power suit. We start our story by transporting back in time to late 19th century Germany. It's 1885, when a baby boy named Hugo Ferdinand Boss is born. Hugo grows up in the southwest German town of Metzingen, an area known for its long history as a hub of the textile trade. From a young age, Hugo had a deep fascination with fashion and tailoring. This passion stemmed from his family background. Hugo's parents ran a small lingerie and linen shop catering to the local community. As a child, Hugo learned the ins and outs of fabrics, sewing, and garment construction from his parents. After finishing school, Hugo kicked off his working career with apprenticeship positions at cloth and textile companies. He then spent 3 years gaining hands-on retail experience in a clothing merchandising role. This diverse early training equipped Hugo with a well-rounded base of knowledge spanning design, production, and sales. In 1902, at the age of 17, Hugo was ready to take on more responsibility. He took over managing his parents' shop full-time. The Boss store sold undergarments and other knitted goods to households around the Metzingen region. Hugo built up steady local sales through the early 1900s. But Hugo had even bigger visions brewing. He wanted to one day launch his own fashion label and turn it into much more than just a small-town lingerie store. World War I put Hugo's entrepreneurial dreams on pause temporarily when he was drafted for military duty in 1917. He returned from war physically unharmed in 1918, aged 33. Though Hugo remained committed as ever to someday building his own garment company. The opportunity arrived sooner than expected. In 1924, Hugo acquired a small tailor shop in the center of Metzingen. This acquisition officially marked the founding of Hugo Boss AG. In the beginning, Hugo focused on manufacturing functional workwear like utility pants and bomber jackets. Attention to quality materials and construction quickly earned Hugo Boss garments a reputation for durability across the region. Early success saw Hugo continue expanding production capabilities throughout the late 20s. By 1930, Hugo Boss had grown into one of the largest clothing makers in Germany with multiple factories and over 100 employees. The future looked bright for Hugo and his blossoming young fashion company. Little did he know, world events were about to alter that trajectory in unimaginable ways. The early 1930s brought turmoil to Germany. The global recession arrived along with political instability and rapid inflation. Like many industries, Germany's textile trade was devastated. Despite years of strong early growth, Hugo Boss fell into financial ruin as sales plummeted. By 1931, Hugo was forced to put his factories into receivership and watch his life's work teeter on the brink of collapse. Meanwhile, Hitler's Nazi Party was building momentum and would soon take control of the country. With the Nazis in power, Hugo saw an opportunity to rebuild his business by getting state contracts for uniform manufacturing. In 1931, Hugo joined the Nazi Party and wasted no time cozying up to key government officials in a bid to secure contracts. His new party connection soon paid off. In 1932, Hugo won his first contracts to produce brown shirts and workwear for early Nazi organizations. It turned out that aligning ideologically with the Nazis was also a convenient business move. With the party rapidly expanding control from 1933 onwards, demand for uniforms skyrocketed. Hugo positioned his company to fill orders for an increasingly wide range of state-sponsored groups, everyone from the Hitler Youth and SA to the Wehrmacht Army itself. By the mid-1930s, Hugo Boss was supplying thousands of uniforms per year, restoring the firm back to profitability. As the Nazis conquered territories across Europe, Hugo benefited from access to forced labor conscripts who were put to work in his factories. This influx of unpaid workers enabled ramped-up production to meet ballooning uniform orders. While conditions at Hugo Boss factories were less harsh than concentration camps, pay was still extremely meager. Hours were long, and laborers could face imprisonment in camps for any drop in productivity or signs of dissent. So, while the moral implications around Hugo's close Nazi ties left many questions, the benefits for his company were clear. Throughout the 1930s and early 40s, alignment with Hitler fueled tremendous financial growth. Boss factories operated at full capacity, churning out huge volumes of uniforms to outfit Nazi regiments. The chaotic downfall at the end of WW II would soon disrupt things again. But for over a decade, Hugo's pact with Hitler transformed his failing company into a booming industry leader. By 1945, Nazi Germany lay in ruins, facing a chaotic aftermath of death and destruction. Hugo Boss, the man, now 60 years old, had profited enormously thanks to his early alliance with Hitler's regime throughout the war years. But with the Nazis defeated, the future looked ominous yet again for Boss, the company. Investigations kicked off into business dealings with Hitler's party. In 1945, Hugo Boss AG was slapped with fines of 80,000 marks for profiting from Nazi connections. All German companies linked with Hitler faced restrictions from Allied authorities, limiting their ability to operate. In 1948, Hugo Boss himself died aged 63, leaving his company very much in jeopardy for a second time. Control of Hugo Boss passed to his son-in-law, Eugen Holy. With the post-war German economy in shambles, Holy focused on manufacturing basic uniforms to keep income trickling in. But volume was still a fraction of the heyday Nazi years. For years, Hugo Boss AG hovered as a shell of its former self, barely staying afloat by selling mundane uniforms to civic organizations like police and the postal service throughout the 1950s. It would take the next generation of Hugo Boss family leadership to slowly rebuild the tarnished company. Though enormous challenges lay ahead, glimmers of its future as a powerhouse fashion label would soon take shape. By the early 1960s, many formerly Nazi-linked businesses were allowed to resume normal operations as the German economy recovered. Hugo Boss remained hampered by its past, struggling to shake persistent ties to Hitler's regime. In the post-war years, Hugo Boss purely manufactured basic uniforms, a business that was minimal and stagnant. But by the late 50s, the company cautiously returned to making civilian clothes, slowly at first with simple suits and workwear garments. In 1960, Hugo Boss passed into the hands of Eugene's sons, Hugh and Jochen Holy. The brothers realized that high-end off-the-rack suits for businessmen offered stronger growth potential than uniforms. Under their leadership, Hugo Boss would hone expertise in elegantly tailored menswear through the following decade. Fabrics were upgraded to luxury Italian wools, silks, and cashmere. Manufacturing modernized to an efficient made-to-measure process focused on quality and fit. By the late 1960s, the premium Boss suit earned renown as a status symbol for well-to-do gentlemen throughout Germany. Beyond production, the Holy Brothers drove aggressive marketing campaigns to distance their family name from Nazi links still lingering over Hugo Boss AG amongst older generations. Sponsoring race car teams and athletes helped the Boss brand appear youthful, dynamic, and forward-thinking. By the mid-1970s, Boss suits symbolized high society German excellence, heralding Hugo's grandsons finally achieving their own success independent of the company's sinister wartime origins. This optimistic upswing set the stage for the Holy Brothers' even bolder global visions moving forward. The ambitious Holy Brother co-CEOs wasted no time, hungry to expand Hugo Boss from just domestic success to worldwide domination. Their driving strategy from the late 1970s forward, aggressively pushing distribution farther across Europe, then internationally to tap new markets. Early wins came from the British market, and by 1976, the company stretched all the way west to open its first store in the United States, a critical milestone marking Hugo Boss's transition towards becoming a global fashion icon. By the early 1980s, the Boss brand resonated as a high-end European-style status symbol for modern businessmen across the Western world. To support increasingly premium positioning, Hugo Boss poured funds into celebrity-studded ad campaigns and endorsements aimed at affluent male buyers. Everyone from Formula One champions to Hollywood heartthrobs put a fresh, aspirational face on dressing head-to-toe in Boss. All this rapid growth swelled revenues by over 20 times from the post-war era lows just 20 years earlier. When Hugo Boss debuted on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange in 1985, its valuation equaled the entire German menswear industry combined. By the 1990s, the company dropped Hugo from branding, completing its dramatic image evolution from controversial uniform maker to prestigious fashion house. Boss continued expanding aggressively into categories like shoes, eyewear, perfumes, and accessories throughout the 90s and 2000s, all targeting premium positioning at the top of the luxury apparel pyramid. Today, the globally dominant Boss brand sells stylish wardrobes, spanning menswear, womenswear, sportswear, and children's lines, while marketing itself as a symbol of modern success. Over its near century of tumultuous existence, the identity of Hugo Boss transformed dramatically from a small-town tailor shop to disruptive Nazi military supplier, then post-war uniform maker, before ultimately emerging as a diversified $5 billion fashion empire. But through all highs and lows, one dark constant persists: the company's inextricable ties back to its founders' morally questionable Nazi business dealings. Though Hugo Boss today concentrates on ethical practices and keeping its distance from politics, echoes of its relationship with Hitler's regime remain an unavoidable part of the company's long history. Perhaps that problematic legacy can never fully dissolve, but the visionary drive of subsequent generations has ensured Hugo Boss ultimately defined itself not by the sinister misdeeds of its creator's past, but through enduring innovation and excellence in luxury fashion. The tangled history behind Hugo Boss leaves us with an uncomfortable truth. Without the founder's morally corrupt pact to outfit the Nazi military, this iconic brand might never have survived at all. It just goes to show that sometimes from the darkness, light and redemption eventually emerge. So, what do you think about Hugo Boss's complicated origin story? Did learning the secrets behind its founder's early Nazi ties change your view of the brand? Let me know if you enjoyed this shocking true tale, and be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next Hidden History feature. In the meantime, go grab yourself an iconic Boss outfit, or maybe seek out a new designer brand with cleaner hands in the past. Either way, thanks so much for watching.